Defense installations often have mutually beneficial relationships with the communities that surround them. Communities can both be social and economic. They've even got their own association, the Association of Defense Communities. Joining Federal Drive host Tom Temin earlier with the top issues facing these communities, the association's executive director, Matt Borron.
I confess this is the first time I've known about this association, and I thought I knew all the ones in Washington, but there's plenty out there. What does this association do? What is the goal here?
ADC has been around for about 50 years. We actually got our start back in the day when DoD started closing bases. And this was really before they even had to ask Congress for permission. So they could literally padlock the gate and throw the community the key and say, good luck. And they did that, as you know. And even then, when Congress got involved with the base realignment and closure rounds, in the 90s and last one in 2005. But, when they first started this some 50 years ago, some communities where this had happened, where they'd lost their base, they got together and they said, really, what do we do now? How do we recover from losing kind of X thousand amount of jobs kind of overnight? And so for probably the first half of our existence, that's who we were. We were these communities grappling with economic redevelopment and environmental cleanup and facility reuse and redevelopment issues, kind of all of that awful stuff. But if you fast forward to today, our membership is almost entirely consistent of communities that host active military bases. And it's organizational-based membership. So sometimes it's a city, sometimes it's a county. A lot of times it could be a chamber of commerce or a standalone defense alliance. But really, it's whichever organization there at the local level that has come to take the lead when it comes to installation, military advocacy, and partnership work.
It seems like local acquisition is important because so much of defense acquisition is done centrally or by the big commands for the local installations, and things get shipped out through various means. But there's also, I guess, important local contracting that can happen for a base that members try to encourage?
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, our members look at their installation through an economic development lens, right? In most cases, it's the largest economic engine there, the thousands of workers and the kind of the waterfall effects of where they live, and service members and their families live off base, 70% or so. So it really is through that lens, and our members do everything they can to prop up the defense sector. So whether it's land use, or encroachment mitigation, that's a lot of workforce development. It's a lot of infrastructure, roads, utilities, all these things that the base relies on. More recently, it's been quality of life.
Yeah, what are the top quality of life issues for military members? I mean, housing comes up, but that's a localized issue. What are some of them?
And that's really kind of the meat of it is all of these quality of life issues are local, right? And they are all kind of different. Housing, childcare, spouse employment is a huge one. Military spouses have some of the highest unemployment in the country. And it's, related to moves and constantly having to find new employers. But you see a lot of things, military child education now, and like you said, housing. And the list kind of seems to grow every day.
Yes. So can members of the association, the local counties or the states or whoever, again, is surrounding that community, it seems one of the issues that comes up is just simply recognizing a licensed trade from one area and honoring that when the spouse moves with the service member to another state or locale.
Licensure and reciprocity has been a huge issue. And you're absolutely right. If I'm a teacher, and I have a teacher's license in one state, does it apply to the other state? And it goes on down. It can be beauticians, it can be lawyers and nurses, you kind of name it. And states have really tried to address that, but it hasn't been easy, right? All of these different professions kind of have their own licensure silos, if you will, within their states. So it's been a lot of coordination. And we have something we call the State Advisors Council. Most states now have an organization at the state level that is responsible for military affairs work. And so by coordinating that, you've seen a lot of states now pass legislation kind of providing that blanket reciprocity for these.
We're speaking with Matt Borron. He is Executive Director of the Association of Defense Communities. And you also have a conference annually, and what kinds of things get discussed there? And looks like you have a pretty good lineup of congressional members speaking.
You know, it's amazing how connected our communities can be to their congressional delegations. Again, installations and military issues are one of the things that can bring us together still, in a lot of cases, in a bipartisan way. So we do have a good, robust caucus on the House and the Senate side. And our national summit next week is really our event and our opportunity to bring all of our communities together and really kind of press Congress and DOD and talk about the issues that are important to us.
Now, BRAC as a process seems to be a thing of the past, even though it's statutorily there in the toolbox, but Congress just never actually gets started anymore. So what do you expect in terms of the lineup and the population of bases and installations in the future?
BRAC is a four-letter word, and I think it's only it only comes up when you're talking to a lobbyist, right? But I don't foresee a BRAC round anytime in the near future. If anything, our communities aren't worried about losing their bases anymore. They're worried about growing, right? How do they attract the next F-35 mission? Or how do they get a piece of Space Force? How can they grow their defense sector at the local level? So the issues that we'll talk about are creating new authorities by which communities and bases can partner on a full range of issues, whether it's infrastructure or quality of life. We've been very successful in getting some of those programs created within DOD.
And what about the civilian workforce that is in all of these installations? That's a group of people that tend to stay put relative to the service members on active duty that come and go, and the rotation in and out there is probably a whole different set of people every 2 years or so. What are some of the issues connected to the civilian workforce, which is a little bit more permanent, if you will, in a given spot?
Well, and honestly, a lot of times the civilian workforce is that continuity, right? So these partnerships that are created when, like you said, a base commander comes and goes every 2 or 3 years, who maintains the intergovernmental support agreements, or the sharing of services and facility maintenance costs. And often that's the civilian workforce. But a lot of times they have kind of specialized needs as well. And communities are really looking at how do they grow that workforce? What are the types of workforce development programs can they put in place, not just for adults, but even at the high school level? The state of Arkansas has done some really interesting program at the high school there where they partnered with the base, and they now have a 2-semester-long cybersecurity and coding course they teach at the high school. And it's taught by uniformed personnel. And, these are just the types of programs that, whether you're in uniform or not, can really help drive partnership at the local level.
Sounds like there's a lot of idea sharing among members from all over the country.
And that's really the goal of ADC. At the end of the day, we're a 501c3, and our mission is education and connection.
Matt Borron, Executive Director of the Association of Defense Communities, speaking there with Federal Drive host Tom Temin. We'll post this interview along with a link to more information at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.